Good evening, America. This is Remember the Fallen from COVID-19 on KLRNradio.net, and I am Sergeant Dave Matthews at gmail.com in the Revitalizing Lives and Remember the Fallen studio in beautiful Seminole County, USA on the Winter Springs Oviedo line. You see, we have adjusted our fire format to cover this pandemic for the freedom of justice. I feel we all have this gut feeling that we can't believe what is revolving around us as Americans decide on who to believe. I only can hope that podcasts like these and others on KLRNradio.net will live up to our slogan, where liberty and reason still reign, as you make up your mind in this uncertainty. This is Sergeant Dave with Remember the Fallen COVID-19. Now, before I open up the can of snakes about CCP's influence over international groups, all right, with my intern co-host, Mark After Dark. Yeah, this current and former Chinese Communist Party officials hold key positions in international organizations. But before I get really involved in that, I want to cover what happened just yesterday, which is so important for our nation. As a true American patriot, I carry around a publication of the Constitution. It's a pocket size, and here's what it reads. It is hoped that this publication will awaken a desire within the inhabitants of this nation to restore to the Constitution the eminence given it by our founders, that we may as a nation be blessed with continued freedom, security, and happiness. So this brings me to an important part of what happened yesterday, so I'm going to read it to you. This might ring a bell to you, right? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, the right of the people peaceable to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Yes, that is our First Amendment, and here is our president on that topic. President Trump's White House briefing on opening churches.
At my direction, if they don't do it, I will override the governors. In America, we need more prayer, not less.
Donald J. Trump is a president like no other. Well, that brings up tonight's show. This is Sergeant Dave with Mark After Dark, our co-host, intern. This will be Mark's third show, and when he finishes his sixth episode, he graduates to co-host status. All right, Mark After Dark.
Well, thanks.
So, Mark, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, all Dave, all night.
All right, thanks for being part of tonight's episode. CCP's coercion and control of the globe. All right, so on the late front, what's going on is China's involvement of, just getting their hands on everything. A total monopoly, right?
Right.
So, U.S. dependence on China's rare earth trade war vulnerability. Rare earth elements are used in a wide range of consumer products, from iPhones to electric car motors, as well as military engines, satellites, and lasers, okay? Rising tensions between the United States and China have sparked concerns that Beijing could use its dominant position as a supplier of rare earths for leverage in the trade war between the two global economic powers. Get this, Mark. China supplies 80% of the rare earths imported by the United States from 2014 to 2017. And whose watch was that on, right? That was on Obama's watch, right?
Well, a lot of people like to blame it on President Obama, but you really have to go back to the whole beginning of the globalist movement. A lot of big things happened back in the late 60s, early 70s with Richard Nixon when he went over to China and got that whole thing. Well, the globalists thought that they could appease the Chinese and they could lure them in with capitalism and see how it creates a lot more wealth and it's going to be good for them and their people, and that eventually they'll convert to our system, which is capitalism, or a modified version of socialism, which is what a lot of European countries are under. Instead of that, all we really did was give them a bunch of money, so they siphoned off our jobs, our wealth, our intellectual property, precious materials, fuel, you name it, they got it, and a bunch of our manufacturing. And it was basically the fleecing of America, like we've talked about in other shows.
What a complete juggernaut, right? I mean, they are just crushing everything in its path. That's what they're doing.
Right.
Total dominance.
Right.
Oh, so China is home to at least 85% of the world's capacity to process rare earth ores into material manufacturers can use, according to a research firm, Adamus Intelligence. Once in a while, we got to throw in some researchers in there, right, Mark? We got to give some credit, right?
Right.
So it would take years to build enough processing plants to match China's processing capacity of 220,000 tons, which is 5 times the combined capacity of the rest of the world. Now, is that a monopoly or what, Mark?
Yeah, it is. But, in order to understand this better, we have to go back to more toward the beginning and something you brought up earlier about how we were dependent on their rare earth metals. Back in, what I want to talk about is the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, some people that are listening may have heard this before. Basically, what it is back in 2013, China officially adopted the Belt and Road Initiative. Basically, what that is some key points here is infrastructure development and investments in approximately 70 countries and international organizations. They're involved in ports and shipping. Some of the ports and the shipping right into our own ports, and they built the ports around in some areas that are close to our country, or close to our coastline, basically. So their idea is to basically swarm the globe with their shipping capacity, and they want to control it.
So that's why they're surrounding basically Taiwan, right? So
right.
They use this initiative to set up their ships around Taiwan to eventually possibly take over Taiwan.
But people are hearing Taiwan, and they're also hearing Hong Kong in the news. What you're not hearing about is the stuff going on in Cuba and Central and South America, like Panama, other countries in Central and South America that's been going on. And they're investing down there, too. They're investing in Africa. It's global. You got to think globally with this whole thing.
So what is the main point of contention here?
Well, Dave, I want to whip out the Epic Times here. The CCP's influence over international organizations. This is one of the headlines of one of their articles in here. And it lists down different international organizations that the Chinese Communist Party has a dominant influence over. Let's start with number 1. A lot of people have been hearing about this lately. The World Health Organization. Who? Gee, haven't we been hearing a lot about that, like I said? Well, they're responsible for a lot of this stuff. Remember they were lying to us about the virus and all the other things that were going on? Yeah, gee, I wonder if the Chinese government has something to do with that. And their point man is the one that's running it right now. Okay? World Intellectual Property Organization. They've been stealing our intellectual property. Oh, imagine that. They're the ones watching the bank. They're the ones watching the store. So while all our stuff is getting stolen.
Yeah, so let's put a Communist Party in charge of it.
Didn't we learn our lesson with the Soviet Union? Never trust a communist?
Right.
But I digress. Let's keep going here. How about the World Meteorological Organization? Global warming. How about that? It's a conspiracy.
Convenient.
How convenient. How about that? All right. UN Human Rights Council. Is that some kind of joke?
Yes.
All I have to go is look inside of China. Look at the way they're treating the Muslims in China, the Uyghurs. They're treating them like in slave camps. They torture them. They kill them. There's awful things going on there. And they're not the only ones. They do the same thing to Christians and other groups.
That's a Fugazi shit sandwich.
Okay, and how about this? The International Telecommunications Union, ITU. International Communications Union. Okay, well, look at their dominance in 5G telecommunications with the cell phone companies and everything. We've been hearing a lot about 5G lately and how dominant the Chinese are in that technology.
Huawei, does that ring a bell?
Huawei, does that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
You read my mind. How about the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO? Well, in college, I didn't tell you, I studied human factors and systems and experimental psychology. And one of the areas of disciplines I studied was aviation safety and security. And I've been to events where ICAO bigwigs were there, along with the FAA and the NTSB and all the other government agencies from the United States and around the world. Imagine that. So not only do they have their people in there, but they're sticking their nose into our business by going to these conventions and making quote-unquote friends with our people. Lord knows what they're getting their hands on.
Let's get to the heart of the issue here. What is fueling all this?
All right, Dave. Now I want to talk about banking and finance and et cetera, et cetera. How about the International Monetary Fund, the IMF? You ever heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, very good. Well, they control a lot of financial stuff that's going on. Investment of funds around the world. Okay, it's basically a big, giant bank. Corrupt as all get out. And look at that. They've got at least 2 people on the board of the World Bank. World Bank funds a lot of stuff going on globally, doesn't it?
Yes,
Infrastructure,
it does.
you name it. Imagine that. So now there's the fuel for the fire. Okay, let's look at some other things here. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, that's another one. Two people on that board of that bank. And then, of course, we have the World Trade Organization, the WTO. Imagine that. They've got their influence in there, and that's how they were able to stay on the World Trade Organization. And they're still maintaining their status as a developing nation, yet they're the second largest economy in the world. How is that even right? How is that even possible?
I think they sneak it by basically the acronyms. I don't think people know what these acronyms are.
Yeah,
Mark.
WTO is World Trade Organization.
Right, and IMF is...
International Monetary Fund.
Right, so what they're spewing, media is spewing these acronyms, and the simple, American out there is not following along and realizing what is happening.
Yeah, well, the average American doesn't understand this stuff. Another thing too is the World Trade Organization. We were talking about that. The appellate body too. They have people in there, so
Judges.
they have even more influence on it.
World judges.
Yeah, basically the appellate body. And then last I want to talk about, this is a big one for me, having been in the nuclear weapons business, is the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. Now, if anybody recalls back during the Iraq War about the IAEA and wanting to go in there and investigate stuff in Iraq, stuff that led up to the war, and then also, too, how they were involved in basically going in and doing inspections in Iran to look at their stockpiles and their stuff, or into North Korea, and all the back and forth, and all the roadblocks that were thrown up, and all the things that were... Well, who's to say that people in there weren't getting paid off? Who's to say the Chinese didn't want certain countries to have nuclear weapons in order to counter our influence in that region, or any of these other regions where this is going on? So you see, there's this giant spider web of Chinese fingers in a lot of different pies here. And this is how they've been perpetuating their nonsense that's been going on. Well, except it's not nonsense. It's a life and death issue. They want to be the world's #1 superpower, and they want to take the dominance away from us.
Now let's throw in COVID-19 on top of all this.
Right. Well, COVID-19, I'm tired of hearing it call that.
Okay.
Correct me. The CCP, the Communist Chinese Party virus, is what it really is, because we know where it came from. It came from a lab in Wuhan.
You keep calling this the Chinese virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no. Not at all. It comes from China. That's why.
Thank you for clarifying that, President Trump. Okay, Mark, what should we underscore here?
Well, you call it COVID-19. That's what a lot of people are calling it. And once again, I repeat, I like to refer to it as the Communist Chinese Party virus, because we know it came from them. We even know the lab that it came from. But I think even interesting is when you dig into the details. Now, where did this lab get its funding from? Well, obviously, the Communist Chinese Party is involved in funding that lab. But there was a certain doctor in the United States that used to be, involved with the CDC and NIH, National Institutes of Health, that went around the Constitution and U.S. law to get funding to that lab to the tune of millions of dollars that helped develop the same virus that we're battling with right now. Does the name Dr. Fauci ring any bells for anybody?
It sure does. I think we should unass him.
Yeah. Well, anyway, make a long story short, not only is he involved in it, he's neck deep in it. And I think his goose is cooked because he's been singing a different tune lately, because he knows that the wagons are getting circled around him. And his days are probably numbered, because I think personally, if he's not under federal investigation already, he's going to be. And there may be charges dropping on him and a lot of other people, because, rumors are spreading around D.C. about who's getting charged. And it's not just the FBI and the Justice Department. A lot of these so-called government agencies have been cooking the books for decades. Well, I would say I was a little suspicious of her at first, but Dr. Birx, who's the head of President Trump's committee that he set up, she seems like a straight character. Keep in mind, she's not only an MD, but she was a full-bird colonel in the United States Army.
Whoa.
And she is the recipient of the Legion of Merit, which is a really big deal in military circles for her service in the military. She started out in the reserves, and then she went active duty from 1994 to 2008. So she served from between 1980 and 2008. That's a long time.
14 years, yeah.
So she knows the military and the civilian military.
Wow.
Which that makes her an incredible asset to dealing with anything medical. She served in a leadership role in countering the AIDS threat and other epidemics. I mean, she just got a wealth of knowledge. So when a woman like that, of that stature, a doctor, more importantly, of that stature, says that she can't trust anything coming out of the CDC or certain other government organizations, that gives you a moment of pause to think, I wonder what truth is really coming out of there. Because they come out with these projections that end up being all wrong, and they haven't been right on anything.
All right, let's circle back, Mark, with a summary.
Okay, Dave, let's look at this. Okay, we already talked about how China is dominant in ports and shipping, roads and railways, manufacturing and agriculture, energy production means oil, gas, coal, alternative energies like biofuels, electric or solar and wind farms. We talked about their 5G dominance and 5G networks for global communications. What we haven't gotten into enough, I think, is rare earth metals and their global monopoly on that. And that's approximately 99 million tons of rare earth metal reserves is what the estimate is as of right now. And the projections of who controls what are all over the map. You know, Dave, I was thinking, after going through all this, I'm thinking about that article you're telling me that you read in Reuters about which companies in the United States are actually highly dependent on foreign resources like rare earth metals.
Yeah, I can pull it up right now, Mark. The most dependent on Chinese supplies at this time is companies such as Raytheon. Oh, not Raytheon. They're out of Waltham, Massachusetts.
Waltham? Isn't that near Fall River?
Fall River. I got a cousin from Fall River. Yeah, it is. It's wicked pissing. I didn't know it was from Waltham.
Yeah, I'm from Hartford.
Hartford. Oh, not Connecticut.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Contaxachit?
Yeah, and then, well, you know, it used to be Massachusetts, and then now it's referred to as the People's Republic of Massachusetts.
All right, let's get out of this massholeness. Let's get back to the show.
All right, masshole.
Let's get back to the content. We let off with Raytheon Company. Also, you have Lockheed Martin Corp. And you have BAE Systems. All make sophisticated missiles that use rare earth materials in their guidance system and sensors. Get this, Mark. Lockheed and BAE declined to comment, and Raytheon did not respond to requests for comment. And also they're adding here, Apple Incorporated uses rare earth elements in speakers, cameras, and to make phones vibrate. Also, the United States imported 160 million of rare earth compounds and metals in 2018, up nearly 17% from 2017. Look at that number, Mark. That's not too high.
That's an awfully low number, Dave. But here's to keep in mind. This is all the switcheroo, you know, misdirections that they're playing. Okay, that number is low, but that doesn't really represent how many rare earth metals are actually coming in either from China or from areas that are controlled or sources that are controlled by Communist China. Okay? Look at iPhones and a lot of other stuff that we buy in this country that we import. We manufacture it in China and all these other satellite air countries, and then it gets shipped over here. Well, the rare earth metals and everything is already in all these other places, and that's not going into the total of the 160 million that you're seeing here. Yeah, that 17% increase is a big increase, but in the grand scheme of things, that's chump change compared to how much money we're spending in reality on these rare earth metals from China.
All right, Mark, that pretty much ends tonight's show.
It's like I've been telling you, Dave. Everybody wants to rule the world.
China. Stick around another minute while I take care of our sponsor, Symmetry Financial Group. After all, we fought for freedom, so isn't it time you broke the chains of debt?
We have an epidemic in this country. It's called debt. As consumers, we all have debt, whether it's school loans, car loans, credit cards, or your biggest debt of all, your mortgage. And as veterans, you deserve to put yourself and your family in a better place financially. Between the interest rates, the fees, taxes, and other charges that we all incur, we're just sheeple in the same old rat race. So if I asked each one of you, are you 100% sure you're going to have a great retirement, or do you have some doubt? Or what if I said, if I could show you how to get out of debt in 9 years or less, including your mortgage, without spending any additional money, would you be interested in knowing more about that? Well, I can. I can do just that. And guess what? It's all tax-free, and it has a death benefit.
All right, it's getting zero dark 30 for the show, and before I relax, never, and go into rack ops mode, go to sergeantdavematthews@gmail.com for suggestions for the next podcast content. And you can always get a hold of me on my Twitter handle, @Heroic Memorials. And if you like my Facebook page, go ahead and like that page. Remember the Fallen, all one word. All right? Remember the Fallen. And if you're drowning in debt, let the Mitri Financial Group throw you a lifeline. And remember now, it's veterans helping veterans. Let a veteran that took the oath help you win the battle of debt. Email me at dmatthews.sfg@gmail.com. Once again, that's dmatthews.sierra-foxtrot-golf@gmail.com. All right. Until all our troops come back safe from Afghanistan, I will see you again tomorrow night, 9 o'clock again, for the spin-off show, Revitalizing Lives. Now, if you can go to the show, remember, it's always 18th, 17th to the right at klrnradio.net. And if you want a debt-free life like me, you can text me at 321-356-6559. All right. Pub, smoke,